From Aiming Incorporated and Team Caravan, the same creators behind the gacha game Eminence in Shadow, Master of Garden. We are once again presented with a gacha based on the popularity of a seasonal anime, and I must say, it's quite strange. And look, there are some weird gachas, like seeing horse girls running or girls on jet skis shooting at each other. Talking about the gameplay mechanics here. 2.5 Dimensional Seduction. Angels on Stage is a gacha based on the summer 2024 anime. 2.5 Dimensional Seduction, which I'm currently watching, and I find it pretty entertaining. Before we dive into the gacha game itself and its oddities, let's get a little context. The story follows our protagonist, Okamura, an otaku who rejects 3D girls and only loves 2D ones, particularly a character named Liliol, a waifu. Now that he's left alone in his club because his senpais have graduated, it's time for new first-year students to join. A first-year girl named Ririsa decides to join the club, discovering she's just as much of an otaku as him and loves cosplay. Manga with a total of 171 chapters at the time I'm uploading this. Our protagonist will find himself involved with different girls, cosplays, and even romance, as it's a rom-com harem. A rather generic story when it comes to harems or romances, but at least it's entertaining. As for the gacha itself, there's nothing truly out of the ordinary, but there's something that makes it quite weird. So let's start by talking about the gameplay. You might wonder, what kind of gameplay does a gacha based on a story about girls doing cosplay have? It's actually an action game, featuring a card system where these cards have stars, and you can combine cards of the same type and the same number of stars according to the character. So it's like reverse 1999, 7 Deadly Sins Grand Cross, or the more recent Cat Fantasy. But what exactly are we fighting in this game? Well, it may sound strange, but it is against cameramen, just like the protagonist at many points and other cosplayers. Yes, this is the really odd part of the game. Instead of having a health bar for our characters or the enemies, or even dealing physical damage, because we're talking about an action game, there's no magical attack since it's not set in a fantasy world. Instead, what we're doing is, so to speak, emotional damage.
Emotional damage!
Yes, emotional damage in the sense that we have to charm or enchant others. Instead of lowering a health bar, we raise a bar called EP, which stands for emotional points. And if the protagonist, the cameraman, or the cosplayers we face get overexcited, we win the battle. So, instead of lowering a bar, we need to raise it. Among these types of enemies, both the protagonist and the cameraman, they don't attack, because they're supposed to be taking pictures, but we have a limited number of turns to overexcite the cameraman or the protagonist. And if we face other cosplayers, they can deal damage, or rather, emotional damage. So, those are the two types of enemies in this game. This is what puzzled me the most, as everything else is like a normal gacha. It has dating elements where you select different responses to earn their affection, receiving a certain number of points. In fact, the first time the game introduces this mode, it references chapter 11 of the manga, where the protagonist imagines a similar situation when going out with the main girl to a convention. Without spoiling too much, he imagines the scenario, and the same responses that appear in the game are what he imagines. I just found it curious to mention. And, well, this mechanic is something we've seen in other gachas. And similar to Nikkei or Eversoul, this game is practically an idle game, in the sense that farming is automatic, and you collect resources that accumulate over time as you progress through the story. For each stage you clear, you gain points that increase your farming level, allowing you to gather more resources over time. As for the gacha, there's initially a paid banner with some SS characters, which are the highest rarity. Then we have S-rank and A-rank characters, with SS being the equivalent of a 5-star, S-rank as 4-star, and A-rank as 3-star, so to speak. The most questionable part of this game is the gacha's monetization, as a 10 pull costs 2,700 crystals. But the real concern is that if you want to spend money, a 10 pull will cost you more than $50, which isn't worth it. For free-to-play players, at least early on, you get a fair number of pulls. Throughout my time progressing through the story and claiming missions, I've felt that the game gives a decent amount of resources, but I can't say how much it'll provide in the long run, especially since events will likely be the primary source. I'm not sure how the rate-up works exactly, but the chances of getting a character are quite high, at 3%, which is pretty good, though not as high as Nikkei, which has a 4% rate. Still, it's not bad for a gacha game. The 3D modeling is well done, and there's a variety of characters, as they all cosplay. So, there's diversity in that sense. However, if we talk about base characters, there aren't many. I assume they plan to release more characters in sync with the anime, since there are still characters in the manga that haven't appeared yet in the game. As the anime progresses, I imagine they'll release more characters, and once the anime ends, they'll probably introduce manga characters, though I'm not sure. Would I recommend this gacha? Not really. These types of anime-based games don't add anything new to the story, nor do they extend the canon of the original work. So I'd only suggest playing it if you really like the manga or anime, but I don't think it offers much incentive to stick around. Not even for the waifus. The waifus are great, and I'm enjoying the anime, but that alone isn't a strong reason for me. For gameplay, it's strange but also curious, though not enough to keep me invested in this gacha. I don't think this gacha will last long. But hey, if you didn't know what to watch or read, I'd recommend watching the anime or, better yet, reading the manga. It doesn't offer anything special, but at least it's entertaining. There are some gameplay modes I haven't mentioned, like a tower mode, but again, I don't think the gameplay is enough to keep me engaged in the game. For a similar card system gameplay, I'd recommend playing Cat Fantasy, which launched globally a few weeks ago, or much more so, Reverse 1999. But that's up to you. I downloaded this game because it showed up as an ad, and since I'm watching the anime, I wanted to try it out. I found its gameplay strange and curious, and wanted to share it. Guys, what the fuck have I just played?